Hi there, my name is Chris McDevitt and I run an IT asset disposal company or recycling company. So we help all sorts of folks at different types of organizations make decisions around how to sanitize their old IT hardware. If you've clicked on this video, it's probably because you clicked on the title, What to Do with Old HIPAA Hardware, right? I'm going to walk you through at a very high level the HHS guidelines around the HIPAA security rule, what combined federal regulations they point to, some proposed updates to the HIPAA security rule, and a couple of case study examples. And then we will finally get into what to specifically do with old IT hardware. This video is going to be a little long and a little detailed, so please forgive me, but I've got to make sure that you have all the pieces so you can make your own decisions, because that's really what all of these regulations, whether it's HIPAA, Gramm-Leach-Bliley, and a myriad of other ones, right? They all fall on the reasonableness standard, and every organization has to determine what's reasonable for themselves. So this right here is the HHS HIPAA security rule main page. So as you kind of scroll down here, you'll see the security rule history. You'll see that it first went into effect in 2003, and its last update was 2013, integrating in some regulations such as high tech, right? But you'll see here, this main page doesn't tell us what to do with old IT hardware, which held electronic ePHI. So if you go actually into the main HHS HIPAA security rule, combined federal regulation, you'll see it here, part 164, security and privacy. We will come down here and just did a quick control F for the word disposal. And really, this is the main piece. You'll see one of two matches here. Implement policies and procedures to address the final disposition of electronic protected health information or the hardware. That's it. That's all the current HIPAA security rule says. It says do something. Well, okay. Are people getting in trouble under this current security rule? Yeah, they are. So this is from about 2018. Hospital in Maine, they just lost a hard drive and compromised 660 patients. While it didn't include their social security numbers or anything, right? It did have condition descriptors and images of specific cardiac procedures performed at the hospital over the course of 6 years. So that's a bummer. This on its own isn't maybe a big deal to some folks, but to HHS it is. It's ePHI, and I'm sure this hospital was penalized. Another example of someone making the wrong decision, Health Reach Community Health Centers. They had to report improper disposals, so they were recycling old hardware. And this breach was a little bit larger. This one involved 116,000 patients, nearly 117,000 patients. I am sure they were penalized. I'm sure that they faced financial penalties and they had HHS and other regulators all up in their Cheerios, so to say. But these are just a couple of examples. Feel free to search for more on your own. But yes, people are still getting in trouble even with this very minimal actual requirement for disposal. As a result of that, what we are seeing now is these are proposed updates to the HIPAA cybersecurity final rule. So all of these links are going to be in the description below, right? But this was proposed just in January of 2025, which is when we're recording this video in 2025. And because people keep having these HIPAA violations related to IT equipment, this one covers quite a few different areas. But once again, I'm just going to search for disposal, right? And excuse me as I kind of jump around here. But you'll see here, right, that the department proposes to modify the current standard and clarify the regulatory text, right? They talk about at a high level, right? Photocopiers today are now connected to workstations and generally store information, including ePHI, to store them. This capability is a significant change from when the first security rule was issued in 2003. They talk about how you need to have destruction of ePHI in a manner that it can't be recreated. And the big thing, or the big improvement in my view, that this is now going to cause is that they are now going to, one, continue to require these policies and procedures, but two, the big thing is they're now referencing other combined federal regulations and standards that actually provide more specific guidance. So the first one that they reference, which is the better one, right? Guidelines to Media Sanitization, NIST Special Publication 888. And then they also point to CISA under the Department of Homeland Security. So what does CISA say? CISA doesn't really say all that much, to be honest with you. It's not going to tell you do X with Y, at least not in a detailed manner. But I think it's still good to maybe review this as you're getting ready to get rid of old hardware which held ePHI. But the big thing here is for more information, review this NIST Special Publication 888. So CISA is also pointing to NIST. So what does that also mean, right? A lot of folks follow NIST Special Publication 853. These are all of your security controls. We're not going through them all. Feel free to read them if you want to. It talks about everything from auditing to program management, personnel security, right? But we're going to go into media protection. And as you scroll through all of these media protection controls, it talks about access, marking, storage, all these different things. Well, the big one here is media sanitization, media protection -6. It still doesn't tell us do this with a hard drive, do this with a solid state drive. It still doesn't really tell us what to do, right? Okay, it talks about tracking and documenting, talks about different types of sanitization and different types of media, but it's still not telling us what to do. Well, you come down here to the references, and it does point to some omnibus things and all that, but there it is again. Special Publication 888. All right, well, final thing here is this is what I think a policy, at least a high-level policy, looks like. This is from the Georgia Department of Community Health. This is publicly posted online, and you will see here it talks about use approved methods to sanitize. Well, what does that mean, right? This is better than most, right? But it's still not saying we're going to do X with Y, or we'll do this with hard drives and this with solid state drives. You have to go to 888. If you really want to make your decisions, you have to go to NIST 888. And these are the overall guidelines. The word guidelines there is key. This document is going to be absolutely full of caveats of saying you as the organization, you as the healthcare organization need to choose the appropriate methods. You need to be reasonable. You need to make sure that whatever you do, it's going to protect the data. But how do you actually do that? Well, I wish that this was higher up, right? But there is a decision tree flowchart on page 17 of the PDF, and 25 if you're searching up top. And here is where we finally get to the kind of meat and potatoes, right? Security categorization low, moderate, or high. You as the organization have to determine if you're low, moderate, or high. I can't tell you what's the right answer. No one will, unless you make a mistake. Then they'll tell you that you were wrong and penalize you. But most organizations that I interact with choose at least a level of moderate or choose a level of high. Most put in some boilerplate language that they're going to follow moderate security controls for media protection. So what does this actually mean, right? I want you to pay special close attention to leaving org control, this decision tree point of yes or no. If it's not leaving org control, what does org control mean? Well, Bob decided to leave the company, and Bob's laptop that was issued, it was just issued to him last year. It's in pretty good shape. We don't want to get rid of that laptop. We want to keep using it. And Sarah was just hired. Okay, re-image that machine and give it to Sarah. It's staying within the company. It's staying within organizational control. Great. Now Joe has left the company, and Joe's laptop was barely hanging on by a thread. So we're going to take that laptop and we're going to shove it in a closet. And we've got a whole bunch of hardware in that closet going back to the 90s. Well, what do we do with that? We can't reuse it. That is now that leaving org control, going off somewhere else. Excuse me. So what do you now do at that point? Well, NIST 888 says if you're moderate, you need to purge that data. Well, what does purging actually mean? Well, if you search 888, we're already in that document, and you type in the word wipe, because I hear all the time, wipe. The word wipe is not really defined by NIST 888. And when you do see it, it's always in this clear section. Now, what does that actually mean, right? We are in Appendix A, minimum sanitization requirements. So you have to make the determination, right? Organizational, environmental factors, all these different things, right? You need to follow the intent of clear, purge, and destroy, right? It does say methods not listed in the table might be suitable, right? But you have to be careful with that. This document is full of this CYA, so to say, right? Of these are guidelines. Now, for each type of media here, it talks about what is clear, what is purge, what is destroy. This is where you actually are making decisions. This is when you go, okay, we'll scroll down here to a hard disk drive, right? I hear all the time, well, we overwrite. Okay, that's fine. Overwriting, the overwrite ext command does achieve purge guidelines. The clear pattern should be a single pass, right? With a fixed data value such as all zeros. Or you can use multiple write passes. So why is it talking about overwrite ext and it's talking about overwrite up here? The overwriting up and clear is using the standard read-write commands at like your operating system level, right? It's not using that lower down the OSI model like firmware level. This overwrite ext command is. So, okay, that's interesting, right? And you can say, well, Chris, I've been running this piece of software forever and it's using the standard rewrite commands and I can't get any data off of it. I'm not going to argue with you if one method is effective versus another. What I am saying is that if a mistake is made, how are you documenting what you're doing? And is what you're doing when a regulator goes to this appendix, is it going to line up? Like, what position do you want to put yourself in to potentially justify your decisions later? A big one that I want to call out, right, is solid state drives. Overwriting does achieve clear guidance for solid state drives, right? But you'll see it's not listed at all under purge guidance. Well, why is that, right? Well, these solid state drives are using a type of flash-based memory. Well, sometimes flash-based memory fails. So that 256 or 512 gigabyte solid state drive actually has more than 512 in it. It might have 600 gigabytes in there. So that way, if some cells fail, it can then go into those extra cells. Also, you can only overwrite a flash-based memory cell so many times. So the firmware of that solid state drive is going to do what's called wear leveling, to where the same data might be written in multiple places, especially if it's accessed frequently. And if you run that standard overwrite command, you might get it in one spot, but you might not get it in another spot. I'm not a full-blown firmware engineer, so please don't ask me those types of questions, but I'm just generally aware of this risk in the space. So that's why you have to go into an actual block erase command for a ATA solid state drive. That block erase command is going to bypass the standard read-write commands, and it's actually going to go to every single sector within that drive and write a 1 over it. I know that was detailed, right? But unfortunately, this is how the regulations currently exist. And technology is constantly updating. There are new commands, there are new techniques out there. I'm not going to pretend like everything isn't necessarily effective, right? But what I would say is, as you're making your sanitization decisions, you need to at least review this 888 and make sure that your decisions and documentation are in alignment with that. So now at this point, you might say like, hey, Chris, like, whoa, I'm an IT guy at a hospital and my boss just said, I just need to get rid of this old hardware. How do I do that? This sounds like a lot. And I would agree, it is a lot. And it is more difficult than a lot of people think it is at first. This is where you probably are going to want to go with a vendor. One thing I want you to be aware of, though, as you're evaluating these vendors, is that the legal liability for your ePHI cannot be, or any sensitive data, cannot be transferred to an outside vendor. So I cannot assume the legal liability of the data you guys have collected and created and maintained and protected for the last few years. You can't transfer that liability to me. If I make a mistake, you, as the hospital or the doctor's office or the health insurance company, are still going to be, your name is still going to be in that headline. I'm probably not even going to be mentioned. And so as you're evaluating these vendors, remember that they're not going to be held liable. And if they don't pay for if you don't pay for the service, then if you don't pay for the product, you are the product, right? That goes with everything with technology. So yes, there are free electronic recycling companies out there. They do exist, and their primary business model, how do they pay their bills? Well, they resell the hardware online. There's nothing illegal about that, right? It's not up to them to protect the said data. They can work with you and they can say, we're going to do X or Y, right? But you need to compare what they're proposing to you to this NIST 888. Or you need to handle that sanitization in accordance with 888 and then hand the hardware over to them. If you're going to go that free route reselling online. You're then going to have some other companies that will maybe promise a little bit more tracking or promise a little bit more, they might promise more security, right? And these are going to be the big corporations that you probably already know. But once again, push that corporation, push that company and say, we are requiring a security categorization of moderate at minimum in accordance with 888. How are you going to achieve that and prove it to us as the customer? And you just have to hold their feet to the fire. You have to review their certificates of destruction to where they show, yes, for this type of hardware, we really implemented purge guidance. The other piece is a lot of what I run into with some organizations, and this is where most of my customers are, they start to digest this standard and they go, you know what? We're just going to go ahead and follow HI. HI says destroy. We're going to destroy. Um, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Destroying the old hardware doesn't mean it ends up in the river or ends up in a landfill, right? We physically destroy hardware on site in front of you, which allows you to maintain organizational control because you can watch us do it. And once those destroyed byproducts get back to our facility, we partner with recycling companies like smelters and other places to recover the precious metals and then get those precious metals back into the supply chain so new hardware can be made. Um, that organizational control is really key. You will have some other folks that will offer destruction services, but they'll say, well, you have to bring it to us, or we'll send a truck and pick it up and destroy it back at our facility. Um, are you really maintaining org control? If you have a contract in place, maybe ask your lawyer, but you are creating another potential opportunity, right, for hardware to fall off the back of the truck, so to say, right, or to get stolen. So that's where our customers, right, they really like that on-site shredding. They don't have to trust us, they just see it. So I hope now you at least have the pieces in place, right, of what does the healthcare security rule actually say, what are the proposed 2025 updates, and you now know, okay, we're going to go with NIST 888, we're going to review this document in detail, and now we can use that to either make those decisions and do it ourselves or to evaluate potential vendors. If you have gotten through this video at this point, thank you. I know it's not an easy video or a fun one, but this is essentially the talk that I run through all sorts of organizations with. So if you need help in maybe evaluating your current process and seeing if it's in alignment with 888, happy to help you. If you are looking for a vendor and you're within 500 miles of Mansfield, Ohio, we would love to compete for your business and maybe explain our cost structure with on-site shredding. Or if you maybe want help evaluating different vendors, right? And you're on the other side of the country and I really can't serve you anyway, but you want like a third party to come in and just help you make those determinations. Happy to help with that as well. So once again, Chris, Mansfield Technologies. Our website is mansfieldtech.us. If you want additional help with how to protect ePHI before recycling, feel free to go to that website and click on the Contact Us button. So thanks a lot. I hope this video was really helpful for you. And yeah, have a great one.